Welcome. I'm Bernice Ross, the CEO and President of BrokerAgeUpRealEstateCoach.com.
And my name is Greg McDaniel, the proud co-host of the very popular podcast, Real Estate Uncensored. But together, Bernice and I are Real Estate Coach Uncensored.
Well, I am very delighted to have one of my favorite people in the world. We've been friends forever and a day, Leslie Appleton Young. She's the Chief Economist, Vice President of the California Association of Realtors. And Greg, we're so excited to have Leslie with us, primarily because there's so much misinformation out there, and we now have someone who really knows what's going on. In fact, Greg, you had some things that you've been kind of hearing that you've been concerned about that Leslie's going to address today.
Yeah, we were doing some pre-show prep, and some of the stuff that Leslie was talking about, and Bernice, you and I were discussing together, is really powerful information. And I was making a joke that this is a really good opportunity for people to get real world information, not hearsay, not secondary information, not Aunt Sue who practiced real estate 48 years ago, and still giving you, popular advice. This is what Leslie's really seeing front lines right now, because people are losing their marbles because they don't know where to go. They don't know who to trust. They don't know what's going to turn out, what's going to happen with my business, and so on and so forth. So Leslie, first off, I'm super excited to meet you. I've been reading and looking at your work for a long period of time, and I didn't tell Bernice this because I wanted us to be surprised, but now, and I really think the value that you're going to drop on us today is going to be something that everybody needs to take out. Don't just sit there passively and sit back information. Sit up and be active in this, guys. Write these answers down. Bring them to your clients. Be a beacon of knowledge, because you're sitting at the feet of the goddess. Now learn, okay?
I think that's a first for me, Greg.
Well, at least I can help out.
He's turning red. I've never seen him turn red. Look at he's bright red. I've never looked at that. This is a first.
This is going to be fun. I can tell already.
Mm-hmm. So, I can't believe it. So, I got to stop laughing. CAR was so proactive right at the beginning of, the lockdowns. Tell our viewers who may not be familiar with what you've been doing, because the work the California Association of Realtors has done is just nothing short of phenomenal.
Bernice and Greg, it's wonderful to be here. I'm happy to share a few observations on what has truly been an unusual time in the industry, in the economy, in the world, and just from the perspective of the association that I work for. For those that don't know, we have about 200,000 members. We have a nonprofit business arm. We have a legal hotline. We have a lot of resources, obviously, with the membership that large. And one of the things that has been incredibly gratifying for me over the last 6 weeks has been to see how quickly this association pivoted to remote work environment, literally within a week. Here's your laptop. Go ahead and go. And what's been truly amazing is, never waste a crisis, right? That's a wonderful saying. And just to see everybody pulling together, and I think we're all probably having more Zoom meetings in our life than we'd like, but the reality is, you have these siloed departments that have been blown apart, and everybody's working together and sharing information and doing everything we can, because this is a really tough period that we're going through. This isn't, I don't want to say a normal recession, because every recession is a little bit different, but this very sudden shutdown of the economy is much more akin to a natural disaster than it is to an economic recession. This didn't boil out of, the mortgage market or manufacturing or anything like that, or the tech world. It really boiled out of something very different, right? It's a global health crisis. So we have been on high alert with forums, and we came out with best practices. I think we've touched over 32,000 of our members in webinars. So there's just been a lot of stuff going on. And in my area, it's been a call to action to create data out of nothing, because if we're going to wait for our usual markers of monthly data, it's way too late. I mean, that's looking in the rear view mirror, and it's such a you look back at the month of March. The first 2 weeks of March were the old world, and this last 2 weeks of March were the new world. So we started a couple of things. We get data feeds from every MLS in the state. We have contracts with all of them, and it's really wonderful that we've been able to do that. And instead of pulling the data down once a month and doing our monthly news release, we are looking at it on a daily basis. We are looking at average daily closings for the week, average new listings for the week, average daily pendings for the week. So we really can get a feel week to week for how things are changing. The other thing we're doing is surveying our members every week. And we started the first weekend in March, just asking them, is this virus situation going to impact your business? Have you had buyers pull back because of the coronavirus? Do you have buyers renegotiating price before the close of escrow? Are your sellers pulling their properties off the market? So now we have almost 8 weeks. We have 8 weeks now of data, and it's been just such a window into the experience that the buyers and sellers and agents are having in the field. So that's just a small taste of kind of what we've been doing that we weren't doing before.
Leslie, quick question for you. You mentioned that you guys used to pull data once at the end of every month. What have you seen in the positive responses from both the public and the real estate agents about pulling this data on a weekly basis for a more real world picture or a snapshot into their realities?
We primarily use it for the presentations that we do and for internal analysis. It shows up on our microsite, our coronavirus microsite, that's updated by our communications department all day long, right? With everything you could imagine a realtor would want to know about how to navigate the environment. And people are thrilled because you look at the March data, it's off a little bit, but not what they're experiencing. But you look at the weekly data, it's like, yes, that's what this is feeling like. And even the encouraging signs, which I'm on the lookout for, it looks like over the past 3 weeks that pendings have bottomed and are starting to come up a little bit, and new listings have bottomed and started to come out a little bit. So while I completely agree with you about people losing their marbles, what I'm feeling now is we've gone through the stages of grief and come out the other end and said, okay, this is the new reality. How do I do this? And one of the, adaptation is happening to these tools that have existed forever, not forever, but a long time. But I didn't need to do that because I could do a regular home tour. I don't need to do a virtual tour. So one of the questions we ask is, are you doing virtual tours? And the first weekend in March, 26% said yes, and now it's over 50%. So that's what I feel is happening, that there's an acceptance. I get asked all the time, tell me the truth. They want to know, really, like both of you said in the introduction, realtors want to know, don't lie to me. Tell me the truth. Tell me what's going on. So that's kind of some of the things that we've been doing and some of the encouraging signs as we're looking at this weekly information.
What are some of the truths that they're asking of you? When they say, tell me the truth, about what?
Well, they want to know things that no one can answer right now, right? They want to know how long it's going to last. They want to know if there's going to be a flood of foreclosure. They want to know if they have clients that want to wait and see what they should be telling them. So it's really all the usual suspects, but it's in a stew that is just overflowing with uncertainty, right? So nobody knows. And I'll be honest with you. I mean, if I didn't have to do a transaction right now, I might be like, whoa, what? I'd at least want to get the data and look at the numbers and see what's going on, because you have to look at it in the context of the local market, right? Whatever your local market looks like. And the local quote unquote market in California, clearly there's a tremendous amount of diversity, just like you're seeing nationwide. I will tell you, I am hearing and seeing data on transactions in Silicon Valley that are multiple offers and over list that are closing now. So this impression that the industry is not able to transact is wrong, right? But it is transacting at a much lower level. But buyers and sellers that are motivated today for whatever reason to get through it, there are realtors out there that can help them do that, and we're seeing it in the data.
You know, it's right now, I'm working with a number of different buyers, and, you know, we need the old adage, when there's blood in the water, you know, go fishing. Well, you know, everyone thought they were going to get a rock star deal because everyone's going to be, you know, just paralyzed with fear. And what I've experienced personally with buyers is that's not the case. You know, there's still a strong seller's market in the areas that I'm working. Are you seeing that across California? I know it's diverse. I know it's different. I feel like Central Valley is going to be different than San Francisco, and, you know, Sacramento is going to be different than LA or San Diego. But overall, are you seeing at least a consistency in prices? You said they're kind of bottoming out in the fall, but they're kind of starting to trend up again. Is that what you're saying? Yeah, I mean, we had rising prices in January and February and in March, you know, when you look at the monthly data. And, you know, key to this is the one variable that I look at first to just figure out what's going to happen, and that's supply, that's inventory. And our inventory is tighter today than it was a year ago by almost a full month. You know, you know, if it's a 2.5 month supply on the market, that means the current inventory you have will sell out in 2.5 months. So today it's around, I don't know, 2.6, 2.7, and it was a full month higher than that a year ago. So I see that the numbers are different, but the trend is the same in terms of tighter inventory. As you know, the song, right? It's very difficult to build in California. It's very expensive. We have a strong economy. It's tough. None of that has changed. You know, the fundamentals that made the market robust before March 15th are still there, right? We just have shelter-in-place orders, and because I don't want to just say it's shelter-in-place orders, and buyers and sellers and realtors who are very concerned about putting themselves at risk, right? And consumers in general. And overlay on top of that, now one of the things Bernice mentioned was when properties are falling out of escrow. And what we're finding in the weekly survey data is that when buyers back out or renege on an offer or don't finish escrow, it's because 9 times out of 10, financial realities have changed for them. They don't have a job, their partner doesn't have a job, their stock portfolio or their parents has disappeared. So it's not that they don't want to anymore. It's just that they can't. And I think one of the reasons why you see the Bay Area and Silicon Valley tech, you know, holding up pretty well is they haven't had furloughs and layoffs in tech. Some of those companies are actually doing incredibly well in this environment, or are able to weather the storm. They've got large cash
large cash reserves. So I think that's another thing that's kind of insulating certain markets from the worst of this.
Leslie, a question for you. And this is something that I've talked to a lot of people about. And Bernice, I want to get your thoughts on this as well. And this is the whole shadow listing, shadow, inventory that could be like a tsunami building up behind the scenes that nobody sees coming. And what I've seen is a lot of people are retaking a restock of their life. Do I want to be here? Do I want to be with this person? Do I want to work in this job? Do I want to live in this area? Do I want to pay these high mortgages? The lists go on and on, right? So after we come out the back end of COVID, and you guys may or may not have the data on it, but I figured I'd ask the smartest person in the room, and that's you, about kind of where, what's going to happen here. Foreclosures. Do you guys see large foreclosures coming up? Do you see investment properties when the renters can't make their mortgage payments? Do you see a lot of multifamilies coming back on? And then with job changes, with sellers just going to heck with this, or buyers going, I just have no desire to really live my life like this anymore. I'm not going to put myself through the stress. Have you guys acquired any kind of data like this? Because there's rumors circulating out in the field that there's going to be a huge inventory influx in Q3 and Q4, and it's going to make up for Q2 and into Q1. And I don't know. I figured I'd just kind of lay it out there and just kind of get your thoughts on it.
Well, I haven't heard that. I'm certainly not expecting that.
Okay.
I think as a counter to all of the really great arguments that you had there is also the flip side, which is people have been confined to their homes now for at least 6 weeks. Mm-hmm. And what a better testing ground for what it's like to be home and what it's like to really enjoy your home. And, one of the slides I have shows a big increase in grocery sales and beverages.
Yep.
And kind of very, restaurants way down, and to go from restaurants has been pretty flat. People are cooking at home. They're actually living in their homes again. And the old saw, there's no place like home. So I really do agree with you. I think there's a lot of reevaluation, and I think it is lifestyle that may or may not involve changing the house. One of the positive things that is coming out of this is a recognition that people can work from home and be productive. And I know we are seeing that at our company. It's unbelievable what we've been able to do. So here's a Pollyanna for areas that don't have enough housing. You're going to have empty office buildings.
Yep.
You are going to have empty malls. Retail is getting hit really hard, and retail isn't getting hit hard now. They've been getting hit hard for a long time, right? So this is kind of my theme here, is the COVID pandemic is accelerating a lot of trends that were already there. Mm. But can you imagine being in the business, and our strategic planning committee has been talking about this at CAR, taking a deserted mall and turning it into affordable housing, a village for people to live, repurposing, and it has, guess what? Plenty of parking, no parking problems. So I think we have to think creatively. Your point about people thinking, well, maybe I don't want to do this anymore as a eventual California emigre retiree. A lot of people are doing that. But a lot of people are like, I want to stay here. My family's here. And if I don't have to drive around like I did, imagine what that means for your peace of mind if we don't have these horrible commutes. I mean, the pictures of nature coming back all around the globe have really, I think, shown people that it doesn't take that long to reverse a negative trend. So that's a long way of saying I don't really know the answer to your question, but I think it will be revealed, and there's no doubt that there's a lot up for grabs right now because people are living a life they never thought they would, and they're doing it, right? What was impossible has become possible overnight.
You know, I saw the malls dying a number of years ago, and that's the same thought I had about 3 or 4 years ago. I'm like, oh my God, this would be absolutely ideal. You can go and you have all the water, all the power, all the electricity, all the stores turn into condos, the big box stores turn into movie theaters, restaurants, gyms, Starbucks, the whole thing. But I mean, that could even happen down on a more micro level on those little strip malls that we see in the corners in Southern California. Now you could see little communities come together where a lot of people are going to say, well, I don't need this 20,000 square foot house anymore. I could go live in 2,000 square feet, 1,500 square feet, and be extremely happy. And it's fascinating. You're so right. So much up for grabs. It's going to be interesting to see where the chips fall.
You know, and I think it's up to all of us to be on the positive side of this coming out, you know, to just be productive and creative and positive about, wow, because I think most people would agree that what was going on before this was just too intense for kind of long-term happiness, right?
Well, Leslie, to your point, I think we're seeing a lot of very positive things coming out of this in terms of being able to shift to doing more things virtually, less people on the roads, more possible affordable housing. A trend I've been seeing, and I think it's going to be, I know a lot of people where I live here moved into smaller places, really downsized, and they're saying, no, I need about another 500 or 700 feet more. So they're buying larger homes in this subdivision, moving like from a townhouse into one of the villas. So, and I've been reading that's a national trend. Also, you sent me one of the findings from your survey that you're continuing to do, and this person noted that they own a number of rental properties, and there was no relief for them, and they're having to step in and pay all the utilities to keep the property from having a lien against it and from having issues. And this is happening on the commercial side too. So I can see that part of the market where a lot of people may be choosing to get out of those kinds of properties, freeing that possible investment inventory to come back around, maybe back into the residential side where it's needed in so many areas. Leslie, a question I did have for you was, we hear about the push, the big trends in the pricey areas in California that are being driven by tech. But what about the patterns in the other parts of the state? Are you seeing more downturn pattern? Is the state kind of separated by the different regions, or is it still just kind of full speed ahead throughout the state?
It's everybody slowed. I mean, let's be clear about that. Even the transactions that closed were part of a much smaller pool of transactions closing. So we did do our March data, and we were down 11.5% from February and down about 6.1% from March of last year. And as I said, that's really the beginning of what I think is going to be a much more significant drop, probably 30 to 40% in April and May. And then after that, it's anybody's guess, right? If we start lifting shelter in place and have a what sounds like is going to be a phased in approach with testing available and so on, we could see the engine getting started and accelerating again. And if that doesn't happen, we're still going to be in this much smaller level overall of transactions. So nobody knows at this point, but I think we're hopeful that by the time we get to the summer, that we'll really see a change in the environment.
What are you predicting in terms of interest rates and also what you see the Fed doing? Where do you see those things
I think
going?
Rates are going to stay low for the foreseeable future, right? The Fed has said we are using every possible tool in our toolkit to provide liquidity. And one way to think of it is the Fed and DC in general have learned to fight the last war. So they're looking back at 2007, 8, and 9 and saying, we are not going to hesitate. And that's why, for example, the CARES Act was developed and pushed out so quickly to get relief for people. unfortunately, you're doing it in the context of a federal government that has been unable to respond to the challenge, right? The Small Business Administration Payroll Protection Program is a perfect example. And one of the things I read is they're being asked to process a volume of loans in one day that they used to do in a year. And their systems are outdated. It's just a real challenge. So I think there's going to be a lot of lessons learned coming out of this. And one of them is you can't starve the government and then expect it to be there in full force when you need it, right? There's going to have to maybe be a little bit of middle ground there. But going back to the Fed, I mean, they have, they're buying bonds. They've reduced rates. They are supporting corporate bonds. I mean, they are really mortgage-backed securities, anything that is insured or supported by the government, right? So Fannie, Freddie, FHA, VA. The challenge is the jumbo market, the non-conforming market, the riskier market. Investors have no appetite for those assets at this point. And so the servicers in the mortgage business are really left in a precarious position, right? Because they have this great unknown, and the great unknown is how many people are going to ask for forbearance, how long are they going to be under it, and even when they come out of it, are they going to be able to continue to pay on the mortgage? And at the other side, because this mortgage is a commodity, right? And on the other side, you've got investors saying, you better pay me, right? So that's part of what's happening. And so you're seeing lenders, even for conforming product, they're raising their standards, right? JP Morgan raised their FICO scores and 20% down payment. So there's a real flight to safety, even though the Fed's providing all this liquidity. And one of the big changes you've seen in the last 12 years is a lot more of the mortgage market is being done by the non-financial entities, if you will, that have very thin margins, right? They don't have a cushion. And that's kind of the scary part of all this. It's not the part that the Fed is really able to control. I think they're doing all they can.
Leslie, I want to circle back to two different things. First of all, for our viewers who are not familiar with what forbearance is, could you explain what that is and how it works?
It's just essentially an agreement that you do not have to pay your debt, i.e. a mortgage, for a certain amount of time. And then typically when that period is through, and for the government guaranteed mortgages or Fannie Freddie, it's 12 months, right, up to 12 months. And then after that, you have to, or probably before that, negotiate what's going to happen afterwards. Now, a ruling came out in the last couple of days that said there'll be no balloon payments, because that was one of the fears, right, is, well, you don't have to pay your mortgage, and then all of a sudden you get the full bill due that very first month, which probably won't work for people. So they're going to have to, an individual borrower is going to have to go in and negotiate with the lender. This is my understanding, with the lender, if it's going to be, if the whole loan is going to be redone, or if it's going to be tacked on to the end in terms of the term, exactly how that's going to happen. But that's what forbearance is, basically, is an agreement that you don't have to pay, and there will be no fees and penalties associated with that.
Well, I'm hearing some lenders are saying that they will do forbearance by letting you tack on the payments at the end of the loan, but you have to go through a whole essential refinance. I'm hearing that
Right.
from the field.
Right.
So, it'd be nice to get that cleaned up. I want to also go back to something that you mentioned. I don't think a lot of our viewers are really aware of the difference in when you talk about the servicers versus the mortgage company or the lender. And the servicers are, they're having issues. Could you kind of explain
Well,
what
they're
that
kind of the
relationship is?
middleman. Yeah, they're kind of the middleman. They're the one that package the mortgages, right? And and sell them. And they're dealing with typically the non-conforming, riskier, not always, but riskier products. So they're the ones that are collecting the mortgage payment and bundling together and taking their fee, right? So if they get $1,000, maybe they get $10 off that, and then they send the rest along to the investors. So when that flow is disrupted with people not paying their mortgages, you still have the investors that bought the asset, right? They bought the pool of loans. They're still owed their money, right, on a monthly basis. So what's the servicer to do? Like, no one is there bailing them out. So the homeowner's getting relief, but the investment side isn't. And I was, it was interesting how you brought up the rental market, and it's the courts aren't open many places anyway, but you're not able to evict people, renters, and they don't have to pay. So it really makes it kind of a difficult proposition for property owners. And overlaid on top of that, in my state, we've had rent control pass recently.
That didn't pass?
Yeah, and it is, there's a cap and so on, but I think it's, rent control doesn't work. It doesn't work. And I think it's making property ownership as an investment a more difficult sell, if you will.
Leslie, thank you for being with us today. One final takeaway that you have for our viewers.
I think it is really important to use this time to really invest in the skill sets that's going to be effective when we come out of this. And one of the big winners that I see in today's and tomorrow's world is the tech-enabled agent. And I think you see that now. All these tools have been available, but now is the time that they're really able to dig in and adapt. And it makes all the difference. If you're not tech-enabled today, you're not able to do the business. I also think it's the agents who take relationships seriously. This period in time is a gift. This is an opportunity to connect with clients, with your sphere, with no object other than to say, how are you doing? One human being to another. Let's make a connection. And it's truly a beautiful thing. So that's great. And then my final is just, I think real estate's going to come out of this in a very strong position. And I think we all need to be ready to service the buyers and sellers that are on the sidelines now, because they'll be back.
What a great way to end, Leslie. Thank you so much. We've been visiting with Leslie Appleton Young. She's the Chief Economist and Vice President of the California Association of Realtors. Leslie, thank you for taking time from your very, very busy schedule to be with us today. We're so grateful for the time and everything that CAR is doing to help the industry. Thank you.
My pleasure. It's been absolutely lovely. Thank you.